Hi Winederlusters! Today we're exploring the far south coast of New South Wales. I've seen it referred to as the Nuruma wine region, so that's what we're going to call it today. Welcome to the Winederlust podcast. My name's Jeanene and I run a wine events business in Canberra. But my real passion is travel, and my bucket list is to travel to every wine region in the world. In this series, I'll be exploring some regional Aussie wine destinations. I'll give you some tips whether you're planning a romantic getaway, a girls' weekend, or you're dragging the kids along. So pour yourself a glass and let's get exploring. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're talking about today, the Thawa people of the Yuin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. In this episode, we're going to talk about the area. It's very broad, from Bateman's Bay down to Eden, which is about 200 kilometres. The Nuruma wine district is way down on the south coast of New South Wales, around the town of Narooma. There's only a couple of wineries there, but there's also a gin distillery and lots of breweries, so you'll have lots of fun in the area. So as you're heading down from Bateman's Bay to Eden, you have the A1 highway following the coast all the way down. In some parts it's near the coast, in some parts it goes inland a bit. You're only about maybe 15, 20 kilometres from the coast at most. In the parts where the A1 goes inland, there are other little roads that take you to the beach and the coastal towns. The thing I love here is the scenery is just so different on the two paths. When I think of the south coast, I think of all the beautiful little beach towns. But then the A1 goes inland a bit to places like Cobargo, Badella, Bega and Tilba. And these are really lush green fields and bush, and you can see why it was such a big dairy country not that long ago. This is also the area that we might remember from New Year's Eve 2019 and the horror start going into 2020 with the Black Summer fires and all the damage that it did and people going to the beaches. I think it's scarred into a lot of Australian people's memories, that media from that time. The area does look like it's recovering as somebody who's visited recently, but you do see these really charred trees now and again. And some of the locals tell me that they just notice that some of the houses that used to be there just aren't there anymore. So it's a great time to go and support the regional area. In addition to gorgeous and not very busy beaches, it's a massive foodie bowl. Nuruma is famous for their oysters, and you can hear my chat with Paul West, who lives in the area as well, in episode 1 about the annual Oyster Festival that's on in the region. The little towns of Badella and Tilba have their boutique dairies. And I actually spoke with Erica from Tilba Dairy. Cheese is the perfect accompaniment to wines. We found their cheese at our local farmers market, and my husband and I are huge fans. And he also just loves their milk. He just drinks it by like the half litres of it. So while I was in the region, I couldn't not reach out to have a chat. Erica is a very accomplished cheesemaker. She studied all across the world to perfect her art. She's very inspiring, and I love her wine and cheese matching suggestions. So keep an ear out for that. You can also check my show notes afterwards. So I'm here with Erica outside of the ABC factory in central Tilba. Beautiful sunny day here, and thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Now, we first heard about you because in Canberra, you guys come to the farmers markets there. And I know that you have the Jersey cows, which is something a little bit different. My husband calls it extra fat cheese, and still like 95% fat-free. It's only about 5%, isn't it?
Well, it also depends how you view fat, Jeanene. In moderation, fat is very important and very pivotal. So I'm not adverse to drinking lovely creamy Jersey milk.
Yeah, he's a massive fan because it's kind of even got a slightly orangey tinge to it and that.
That's all the good beta-carotenes from the grass that they forage in all the time. So that because they're outdoors most of their lives, they'll be in the dairy shed for maybe 3 hours a day, and then they're out in sunshine, out in the grass for the rest of the time. So, fantastic. Yeah, it is actually a really healthy aspect of our beautiful Tilba Real Dairy full cream milk.
So how did you get into the Jersey cows? Because that is unique, isn't it? Yeah. Like most other dairies use different... What's the regular cow?
The big black and whites are Holsteins, Holstein or Friesians, so the same thing. It's an American-based cow. They're a very big cow. They come in and weigh in at about 600 kilos when they have their first heifers and can weigh up to a tonne, as opposed to a Jersey who would carve in at about 300 kilos. And why do we milk Jersey cows? So one is the size difference and the impact of the animal on the land. So for us, we felt like we could milk more cows on our property. So a Jersey cow will give you less milk than a Friesian. So we'd get about between 12 and 15 litres a day from each cow, and for a Friesian it'd be up to 40 litres. So the size is directly relative to the capacity of milk, but for us it was about the quality of the milk was really important, so it was the high butterfat and high protein. And also Jerseys have a higher incidence of A2 protein as well, so that meant that we would potentially have a much healthier product that we were drinking ourselves and selling to people as well. So, and not only that, it's the temperament of the Jerseys. They're the most beautiful animals. They're lovely caramel brown and they've got lovely big long eyelashes, and so that was why we chose Jersey cows. Was my husband was actually the Jersey enthusiast. In fact, he's a farmer. I was more of a city girl, like when I say city, town girl I should say.
So where are you from originally?
Bermagui.
Oh. Big town.
Not so city, well, bigger than Tilba. So that was part of what he had the drive to do, dairying, and then I was at home and I had, we had 6 children because, Nick's got three children. I've got 3 step, and then we've got another 3, so we had 6 children altogether. And so that meant that I was sitting at home and I was wondering what to do with myself, and I've always been really passionate about food and about the source of food, where food comes from, how it affects the body. There's so much that goes into making a block of cheese or a bottle of milk. Like, from getting the grass to grow, even there's a step before then. You have to get the microbes right in the soil. You get the grass to grow. Then you have to inseminate or have a bull with your cows. Then you have to wait 10 months for the calf to be born. Now, then once the calf is born, she takes 18 months to 2 years before she comes through the dairy. So it's this very long process. So then you've got guys that get up at 3:30 in the morning to milk the cows 365 days a year, twice a day, every day, without fail. And then we've got a whole team here at the factory that come every week, Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 3:30, to produce this wonderful product, to make sure that we're getting out the best product that we can to our clients. And then there's the wonderful ladies in the shop. Let's not forget the people in the office who do all the wholesale. There's so many aspects to getting this right.
Yeah. You'll be telling me that you had your family. So did you know how to make cheese?
No.
No, so you learned.
I did. I started making in the kitchen, and it was like alchemy in the vat. It was amazing. And because I was all about straight from the source, wholesome food, and have been forever. It was from my mother, handed that down to me. It was wonderful to see this liquid that we had been producing on a bulk state, and how easy it was to make some basic cheeses, some ricotta, some feta, like some of those really easier styles, and butter. And so that was the start of this is great fun. And then in I think it was Dairy News or something like that, it came up that there was a dairy scholarship available.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I applied for that, and I was luckily I was successful. And so I went around Australia to 3 different placements in 3 different factories, and then I went overseas to 3 different countries as well.
Oh, wow.
And then there was also a theoretical aspect down in Melbourne, what was the Werribee campus there of Melbourne University, which was a cheese-making campus. And so that really cemented my journey. And then we bought a little plant up down Potato Point Road in Badella and cut our teeth there, and then bought the ABC Cheese Factory, the historical cheese factory, in 2012 in Tilba, and basically have grown from there. So Tilba was synonymous with gold mining and forestry, and then I think when gold mining started to peter out, I think would have been early 1900s, and then dairying came into the forefront. So Tilba, Bega, Badella, Cobargo, all of these areas up and down the coast have been dairy areas.
They're stunning to drive through.
Oh, they're beautiful. Yeah, it's such a wonderful, wonderful place here. And I did grow up here, so I am probably a little bit biased in...
Oh, I didn't, and I think it's gorgeous.
But it is. It's just got it's pristine waters. There's wonderful bushland. There's beautiful beaches. And now that we've got a lot of people have moved to this region as well, it means that we've also got diversity in foods that we can offer, in wines that are available.
Because I think of it as a beach holiday, but the thing that astounded me recently is it's like this foodie bowl as well.
Absolutely.
A couple of the dairies, you've got wineries, you've got distilleries, you've got breweries.
Yeah, we've got it all. There's just so much here, and there seems to be more and more bespoke industries emerging out of this area, which is really wonderful.
What's your favourite wine and cheese pairings?
Oh, there's so many.
Yeah.
It's so good. Okay, I would have to say my standout would be a nice full-bodied Shiraz, a little bit of age under its belt. So you want some really nice robust flavours there. You want really good balance on the palate, and I think that goes beautifully with a superior cheese, which would be like your husband's favourite 3-year vintage. You want a robust wine with a robust cheese. Otherwise, on the palate, the marriage does not work. One overpowers the other, and the one gets lost in oblivion. A chive or a herb and garlic cheese goes very, very well with something like a full-bodied Sauvignon Blanc. So you've got the lovely fruit, and you've got the big passion fruit and the flavours coming through. They blend quite well. A Pinot Grigio or a Pinot Grigio, both beautiful wines, and particularly if they're very, very fruity. I love them with our Canal Hill Camembert. But if you have something that's a little milder, like so if we do go for a Tempranillo or even Sangiovese or something along those lines, I would go with just very mild cheddar.
Yeah.
Not
so
too
what one's your
overpowered.
mild cheddar?
It's called Tasty. So that's just a lovely, creamy, nice, well-balanced cheddar with a very mild cheese. I've got to give you another pairing, though, that I think is spectacular, is our fruit cheese. Okay, well, I love that with a botrytis or a fortified, if you don't mind too sweet, because you have got sweet with sweet, but you have got the acidity of the fruit to actually break through the sweetness, so they do balance well.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, our smoked cheese goes well with, just thinking, maybe a Cab Sav, smoked cheese and Cab Sav.
Yeah. The fruit Cab Sav, yes, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yum.
So if families, especially since being a mum of, six kids, come to the region, what's one of your tips for them to do? So obviously come to the cheese factory.
Come to the cheese factory, absolutely.
Check out how the cheese making stuff through the window there and buy some cheese.
Yeah, and we've also got a lot of local condiments and honeys and things like that here, and lovely creamy milkshakes and ice creams and all those yummy things. But in Tilba there's also the lolly shop, I think is a must, as your son just attested to as well. We've also got some wonderful specialty stores in Tilba. It's quite an eclectic blend. We have a bakery here. We've got the old historic Dromedary Hotel. You can get a lovely counter meal or pub meal here. And then we've also got Ellen's Pantry and the Teapot, which are a husband-wife team on both ends of the town. That's really nice as well. They do. And there's also Yuman Tea. They do beautiful scones with like a Devonshire tea. So there's lovely places to eat here. There's lovely shops to come and browse around. You can just bring a picnic blanket and pull up a bit of grass and grab a cheese. We do little cheese sample packs and biscuits, and you can sit out there and just enjoy the sunshine and watch the world go by.
Oh, that's awesome.
If you want something that's a little bit more active, there's a bike track that has just been established with National Parks and the local Yuan people, which is on a farm called Bellbrook. So you can actually walk around right under the cliff face of Gulaga or Mount Dromedary, which is just superb.
So how far is that from here?
It's right here. It's right up near where the pub is. You walk up behind the pub and there's some steps there, or you can go, I'm pretty sure that's the entrance there, and you can walk down, and then you can even ride your push bike around.
I think that's excellent. Thank you so much, Erica.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful to speak. Thank you. Okay, so back to the wine. So the Nuruma wine region is around the town of Narooma. In regards to what wines to try, being a coastal region, the winemakers are growing grapes that will work in that region. You can find Chambourcin because it's quite a disease-resistant grape and it grows well in coastal areas. I've had a very interesting chat with Gary from Rusty Fig. So this winery is like his retirement hobby, and he really considered the climate and what was comparable to overseas for inspiration of what to grow. We followed up my visit to the vineyard with a chat over Zoom. So it's not the best quality, but I hope you'll enjoy this chat. How's the vintage looking this year? Because I know last year was awful for you.
The grapes have been picked. It's a very limited vintage this year because in the previous season, as you know, we were burnt out by the bushfires. We lost roughly one half of our vines and they had to be replanted, and of course you don't get any grapes from them in the first year. But the other vines have been coming back, and we got a limited vintage this coming year. So yeah, we'll have some wine to sell, but not as much as we usually have. a pleasing development is that we did plant a new variety last winter after the fires. It was an Italian variety called Piano.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been such a good season for growing because of the amount of rain we've had that I expect the vines will actually yield some grapes next year in their second year, which is quite unusual. So we're expecting September 2022 to have some piano for sale as well.
Excellent. I look forward to that. That sounds great. So you planted the grapes there on your vineyard. They weren't already established, were they?
We established the vineyard in 2002 and we planted 3 varieties at the time. Tempranillo, which is the red grape, with yellow. At the time we planted another one, the Spanish variety called Albarino, but about 5 or 6 years later it was discovered that what was thought to be Albarino in Australia, and not just in our own vineyard, but in other vineyards as well, was not Albarino, but an unusual French variety called Sauvignon. It's not Sauvignon Blanc, and so we were forced to change the labelling of it, and even though it was exactly the same wine, and tasted very much like true Albarino, we actually had to label it as Sauvignon. Yeah, it was a complication because there's no difference in the wine, and the wine had been very popular before this issue arose. But from a marketing point of view, Sauvignon is quite a difficult thing to market because it's difficult to pronounce to begin with, and it's also confusing with Sauvignon Blanc. So what I've found is that people, when they try it, some people, not everyone, it's one of those wines you either really like it or you don't like it. And the people who really like it find it quite distinctive, different from other varieties. So they sort of come back and keep buying it. So it's a bit of a niche wine, I suppose, is what I'd say. And so I'm not looking to produce too much of it, but just enough to sort of cater for the people who really like that style of wine.
Well, your regulars.
That's correct.
So how did you choose those 3 grape varietals when you first planted? Because I don't think Tempranillo would have been very popular nearly 20 years ago.
No, it wasn't. It was a fairly obscure variety in Australia. Well, I guess the strategy at the time was we didn't want to produce mainstream varieties like Chardonnay and Shiraz and Riesling because there's so much of that around. We didn't think it would be possible to be very distinctive, if you like. And when we started out, we envisaged sort of selling into Sydney and Canberra as well as locally down the coast. So we looked around and we thought that Spanish wines were on the way up at the time. And so we knew Verdelho was very well known and can produce a very nice wine, particularly in cool climate areas. And we also sort of learnt about Tempranillo and importantly discovered that it's an early ripening variety, which there aren't very many red varieties which are early ripening. But by and large, they ripen later and you need to sort of keep them on the vine quite a long time before they're picked. And by and large, where we are on the far south coast, red varieties don't do particularly well. And that is because the sort of January, February, March period, which is the ripening period, is a rather uncertain period as far as the weather goes. And you can have quite a lot of rain. You don't necessarily have a lot of sunshine.
Yeah.
Depends on the season. So it can be very difficult to ripen traditional varieties like Cabernet or Shiraz. I'm going to be planting this winter, actually, another variety. And it's a variety I did have some of before the fires, but I lost it all in the fires. It's a very unusual Spanish variety called Mencia or Mencia, as it's pronounced in Spanish. And again, it's an early ripening variety. Yeah, it's more like a Shiraz in its style. So I'm giving that a go because I'm trying to sort of stay with sort of unusual varieties, if you like.
I love that, yeah. I love trying different ones. So what part of Spain is that from?
Well, it's up in the northwest. So, I mean, it's towards the Atlantic coast, that area, so it doesn't need a lot of heat to ripen.
Yep.
No. We used to live in Canberra like you, and just after I retired, we put in the vineyard, basically. So the vineyard was a bit of an afterthought.
Retirement hobby.
Well, that's what I call it a commercial hobby. It's a hobby, but I try to run it commercially.
Yeah, why not? That sounds great. So it always strikes me as interesting people that run vineyards when they're retired, because it's a very demanding job.
Well, it is. I know. I probably didn't know what I was in for when I did it.
So in addition to Rusty Fig, a couple of other wineries in the region are Mimosa, Breakfast Creek, Tilba Winery, and outside of these, there's also some breweries. And if you like your gin, check out the North of Eden Gin Distillery and Gin School at Stony Creek, which is near Bega. So other things to do. There is tons to do in this region. There's lots of lovely, quaint villages, as you heard about Eric talking about Tilba. There's Mogo Zoo. It's quite small, but all the animals have huge outdoor enclosures. Off Nuruma is Montague Island, and they have penguins and sea lions, and there's lots of tours where you can go swimming with the sea lions and penguins. Bordello Dairy also do cow milking on site a couple of times a day. There's the South Coast Oyster Trail, and it will tell you all the places to stop and grab your oysters. In March, there's the Sculpture Walk along Bermagui. There's lots of bushwalking. There's two mountains, the Gallagher Mountain, which is known as the Mother Mountain, and that's always been a woman's place. And the Mumbala was traditionally a men's mountain containing initiation sites. So this area is very significant to the local Aboriginal people. There's also a 2-day, 1-night Aboriginal cultural tour that includes a wellness session and healing workshop, and they'll also talk about the significance of the mountains in the region. There's also the beaches. There's so many little tiny alcoves, and if you hear my first episode with Paul West, he talks about how so many of the beaches don't have any people on it, but even in summertime, which to me is just mind-blowing. So some quick stats on the region. It's approximately 3 hours drive from Canberra, 5 hours drive from Sydney, and about 7.5 hours from Melbourne if you go along the bottom coast. There's an airport at Merimbula, which is in between Bermagui and Eden. There's lots of accommodation options, heaps of caravan parks, cabins, motels and Airbnbs. You'll find that a lot of the accommodation probably have 5-star views rather than 5-star facilities. I'm a bit of a fan of that, actually. We stayed in some holiday parks right on the beach that were just stunning. And in some places, there are kangaroos on the beach too. And I still get a thrill out of seeing a kangaroo. If you're looking for something a little bit more upmarket, check out the Seahorse Boutique Inn just outside of Eden in Boydstown. You can either base yourself somewhere and do day trips to different places, or I like the idea if you're coming from Sydney or Melbourne, stopping at different towns along the way. It's such a wonderful and diverse part of New South Wales. And the bonus for us wine lovers is that there's a few interesting drops to try too. So enjoy. Thank you so much for listening. You can subscribe now to get each episode as they drop. You can also check out this podcast on YouTube and see pictures of the region and the people I've spoken to. Go to winedelust.com.au, that's winedelust.com.au for everything discussed today. You can also subscribe to my newsletter to hear all about my upcoming events and other news. Till next time, happy wine travels. Hi Winedelusters! Today we're exploring the far south coast of New South Wales. I've seen it referred to as the Narooma wine region, so that's what we're going to call it today.